The metal doors of the emergency medical bay hissed open as Scott Owens was rushed in on a hovering stretcher, his face contorted in pain but somehow still managing a grimace that resembled a smile. Blue-tinted blood soaked through his expedition suit, where 3 deep puncture wounds marked his right thigh. The alien medical team moved with practiced efficiency, their elongated limbs working in perfect coordination as they transferred the human to the main treatment platform. "What happened?" demanded Dr. Zieler, the ship's chief medical officer, his 4 eyes rapidly scanning the human's vitals on the holographic display. "Venomous attack from a Zirilian spine crawler," explained Havoc, the security officer who had carried Scott in. "We were mapping the eastern caves when it ambushed us. Got him with its primary stinger before we could neutralize it." Dr. Zieler's skin shifted from its normal green to a pale yellow, a sign of extreme concern among Veldorians. "Zirilian venom? How is he still conscious?" The toxin concentration in a mature spine crawler should have caused total neural shutdown within minutes. Scott coughed and tried to sit up before a medical assistant gently pushed him back down. "It's not my first rodeo with these things, Doc," he said through gritted teeth. "Been stung 3 times before. I've built up tolerance." The medical team froze, all 6 of them turning to stare at the human with expressions ranging from disbelief to scientific curiosity. "Impossible," whispered Dr. Zieler, moving closer to examine the wound. "Zirilian venom is one of the deadliest neurotoxins in the known galaxy. No species develops immunity to it." "Humans are weird like that," Scott replied, wincing as the pain intensified. "Look, I'm not saying it doesn't hurt like hell. It does. But I'm still here talking to you, aren't I?" Dr. Zieler rapidly tapped commands into his medical scanner. "Marrow, prepare an anti-venom injection. Liska, begin tissue regeneration protocols. Tavik, I need a full report on the incident." As the team rushed to follow orders, Dr. Zieler leaned closer to Scott. "Human physiology continues to surprise us, Mr. Owens. But tolerance or not, you're in serious danger. We need to act quickly." Scott nodded weakly, the false bravado finally giving way to the reality of his situation. "Do what you need to document. I trust you." The next few hours were a blur of pain and medical procedures as Dr. Zieler and his team worked tirelessly to neutralize the venom and repair the damaged tissue. Scott drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally hearing snippets of concerned conversation among the alien medical staff. "The venom concentration is 3 times what should be lethal. His system is producing some kind of natural counteragent. I've never seen cellular adaptation like this." When Scott finally fully regained consciousness, the main lights in the medical bay had been dimmed to simulate night cycle. Dr. Zieler sat at a nearby monitoring station, his 4 eyes focused intently on data scrolling across multiple screens. "Hey, Doc," Scott called out, his voice rough. "Did I miss dinner?" Dr. Zieler turned, his skin now back to its healthy green shade. "Mr. Owens, your humor mechanism remains intact, I see." "It's just about the only thing that doesn't hurt right now," Scott replied, attempting to sit up. The movement sent a wave of pain through his leg, but it was duller now, more manageable. "Please remain still," Dr. Zieler said, moving to Scott's bedside. "The anti-venom has neutralized most of the toxin, but your body is still healing. The tissue regeneration will take at least another day to complete." Scott nodded and settled back. "Thanks for patching me up. Again. This is your 4th encounter with a Zirilian spine crawler?"
Dr.
Zieler asked, clearly still struggling with the concept.
"Yeah.
First one got me on Outpost 7 about 3 years ago. Nearly died that time. Second was on a research expedition to Vega Prime. Third was actually right here on Eldoria, about 6 months ago." Dr. Zieler's upper eyes blinked rapidly while his lower pair remained fixed on Scott. "And each time, your reaction to the venom was less severe?" "Pretty much. First time, I was in a coma for a week. Second time, 3 days of fever and hallucinations. Third time was just extreme pain and some temporary paralysis in my arm. Fascinating, Dr. Zieler murmured. Human biology never ceases to amaze me. Your species' adaptive capabilities are remarkable. Don't get too impressed, Scott said with a weak laugh. It still feels like someone replaced my blood with lava. Dr. Zieler checked the monitoring equipment and adjusted something on Scott's foreline. This should help with the pain. I would like your permission to study your blood samples more thoroughly. What you're describing, this acquired tolerance to Zirilian venom, could be incredibly valuable research. Knock yourself out, Scott replied. If it helps someone else survive one of those nasty crawlers, it's worth it. Thank you. Dr. Zieler made some notes on his data pad. Now rest. Your body needs time to recover. Scott closed his eyes, feeling the pain medication spreading through his system. Hey, Doc, he asked drowsily. Yes, Mr. Owens? Next time we're mapping caves, maybe you can come along. Bring some of those fancy medical gadgets. Might save us both some trouble. I prefer my medical bay to cave exploration. Thank you, Dr. Zieler replied, a hint of what might have been humor in his voice. But I will ensure you have better protective gear. And perhaps a neural scanner to study your brain's response to the venom in real time. Always turning everything into a science experiment, Scott mumbled as he drifted off to sleep. That is my job, Mr. Owens, Dr. Zieler said quietly to the now sleeping human. He turned back to his screens, a new sense of purpose driving him. The data from Scott's blood work was unlike anything he had seen before. The human's claim of build-up tolerance wasn't just brave talk. His body had actually developed adaptive mechanisms against one of the most lethal toxins known to galactic science. Dr. Zieler began compiling his research notes. This discovery could change everything they knew about xenobiology and toxicology. And it might just save countless lives across the galaxy. The next morning, Scott awoke to find Dr. Zieler still at his workstation, surrounded by even more screens than before. The Veldorian appeared not to have rested at all. Have you been there all night? Scott asked, his voice stronger than the previous evening. Dr. Zieler looked up, seeming momentarily disoriented.
Yes.
Your blood samples have proven exceptional. I've been analyzing the adaptive mechanisms at work. And I believe I understand how your body has developed this tolerance. Your immune system has been progressively creating specialized antibodies that target specific proteins in the venom. It's similar to how some Earth species develop resistance to snake venom, but far more sophisticated. Scott shifted position, noting with relief that the pain in his leg had subsided considerably. So, I'm not crazy? I really have built up tolerance to this stuff. Indeed. Though I would not recommend testing the limits of this tolerance, Dr. Zieler replied dryly. Your recovery rate is impressive, but you still suffered significant tissue damage. No plans to go looking for trouble, document. Those crawlers find me just fine on their own. The medical bay door slid open, and Captain Alara Voss strode in, her tall, slender form commanding attention immediately. Her metallic scales shimmered under the lights as she approached Scott's bed. Expedition Specialist Owens, she said formally. I understand you had another encounter with the local wildlife. Captain, Scott nodded respectfully. Just getting better acquainted with Eldoria's ecosystem. By allowing yourself to be repeatedly injected with deadly venom? Her facial tendrils twitched, indicating either amusement or annoyance. Scott still struggled to read Serovian expressions correctly. Not by choice, Captain. Those spine crawlers are just really determined to make my acquaintance. Captain Voss turned to Dr. Zieler. Doctor, what is his condition? Remarkably stable, Captain. The human system has developed a partial immunity to Zirilian venom through previous exposures. I've administered anti-venom and completed tissue regeneration procedures. He should be fit for light duty in 2 days. Good. The captain's gaze returned to Scott. The mapping data you collected before the incident has proven valuable. We've identified several potential sites for the research outpost. Glad to hear it wasn't a total waste, Scott replied. Once you're cleared by Dr. Zieler, report to Lieutenant Navarre for your next assignment. She turned to leave, then paused. And Specialist Owens? Yes, Captain. Perhaps consider wearing the enhanced protective gear our quartermaster has been recommending. Your tolerance is scientifically fascinating, but I would prefer not to lose our best cartographer to unnecessary heroics. Understood, Captain. After she left, Scott let out a long breath. She's intimidating. Captain Voss has commanded this research vessel for 15 standard years, Dr. Zieler said, while checking Scott's vital signs. She has earned her reputation for efficiency. And for caring about her crew, Scott added. Even the weird human ones. Indeed. Dr. Zieler completed his examination. Your recovery is proceeding well. The tissue regeneration is approximately 60% complete. Another day of rest should. He was interrupted by an emergency alert blaring through the ship's communication system. Medical team to Hangar Bay. Emergency situation. Repeat, medical team to Hangar Bay. Dr. Zieler immediately tapped his communication badge. Zieler here. Nature of the emergency? Survey team returning with casualties, came the tense reply. Multiple spine crawler attacks. 3 crew members affected. 1 critical. Scott was already trying to get up. Same creatures that got me? Mr. Owens, you must remain. Doc, I might be able to help. If they've been stung by the same species, my blood could contain antibodies you need. Dr. Zieler hesitated only briefly before nodding. Very well, but you will travel by hover chair, not on foot. Minutes later, they arrived at the hangar bay to find chaos as the survey team shuttle was being unloaded. 3 crew members lay on stretchers, attended by medical assistants. The most severely injured was Neril, a young Thrashan scientist who had joined the expedition only months ago. His normally blue skin had turned an alarming shade of gray, and he was convulsing violently. Same species of crawler? Dr. Zieler asked one of the uninjured team members as he rushed to Neril's side. Yes, Doctor. A nest of them in the western caverns. They seemed more aggressive than usual. Scott maneuvered his hover chair closer. The western caves are part of their breeding grounds. This time of year they get territorial. Dr. Zieler glanced at him. You know this how? I read the previous expedition reports. All of them. Not just the summaries. The doctor turned back to his patient, administering an emergency injection to stabilize the convulsions. Marrow, prepare for emergency blood filtration. Liska, I need a direct synthetic antibody fabrication unit. Scott moved his hover chair alongside. Doc, use my blood. The antibodies are already there. Interspecies blood transfer carries significant risks. Not asking for a transfusion, Scott clarified. Extract the antibodies, synthesize them. You were going to study them anyway, right? Dr. Zieler's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign Scott had come to recognize as the Veldorian equivalent of a sudden realization.
Yes.
Yes, that could work. Marrow, take Mr. Owens to Lab 3. Extract a blood sample and begin antibody isolation immediately. As Marrow guided Scott's hover chair away, he looked back at the suffering Thrashan. Will he make it? If your antibodies work as I hope they will, Dr. Zieler replied, already focused on stabilizing his patient. He has a chance. The next hours were a blur of activity. Scott's blood was drawn, processed, and the specialized antibodies isolated and synthesized into a treatment that Dr. Zieler administered to all 3 victims. Scott insisted on staying in the medical bay, both to monitor the progress and to provide additional blood samples if needed. By ship's evening, the results were clear. 2 of the victims were responding well to the treatment, their conditions stabilized and improving. Neril, who had received the largest dose of venom, remained critical but had stopped convulsing and shown small signs of improvement. Dr. Zieler finally took a moment to rest, collapsing into a chair near where Scott sat monitoring the patient's vital signs. "Your antibodies are working," the doctor said, his voice betraying his exhaustion. "The synthesized treatment appears to be neutralizing the venom more effectively than our standard anti-venom." "Glad my bad luck with those crawlers is finally good for something," Scott replied. He looked over at Neryl's still form. "He's young, isn't he? 22 standard years. This is his first deep space assignment." Dr. Zieler's skin briefly shifted to a blue-tinged sadness. Scott had learned. "He reminds me of myself at that age. Eager to discover, to understand." "He's going to make it," Scott said with conviction. "Your medical skills and my weird human blood will see to that." Dr. Zieler nodded slowly. "Perhaps. The next few hours will be critical." He turned to face Scott directly. "You should return to your own recovery bed, Mr. Owens. You've done what you can here. I'll stay a bit longer, if that's okay." "Not tired yet?" The doctor seemed about to argue, but then simply nodded. "As you wish." They sat in companionable silence for some time, monitoring the patients, before Scott spoke again. "You know, when I first signed on for this expedition, some of my human colleagues thought I was crazy." "Oh, why is that?" "Working on a primarily non-human crew, venturing into unexplored territories. They said I was taking unnecessary risks." Scott smiled faintly. "Guess they were right about the risks part. Yet you chose to come anyway." "The chance to map new worlds, to see things no human had seen before. Worth the risk to me." Scott gestured to the medical bay around them. "And I've learned more about alien cultures and biology by working alongside you all than I ever would have from Earth's databases." Dr. Zieler's skin took on a slight purple hue. Amusement or appreciation, Scott thought. Including first-hand experience with Zirilian venom. "Especially that," Scott laughed, then winced as the movement pulled at his healing leg. "Though I could have done with a bit less first-hand experience there." Their conversation was interrupted by an alarm from Neryl's biobed. Dr. Zieler was on his feet instantly, rushing to the young Thrashan's side. "Vital signs destabilizing. Prepare additional antibody treatment." Scott watched anxiously as the medical team worked furiously to save the young scientist. Something nagged at his mind, a detail from one of the reports he'd read months ago. "Doc," he called out suddenly. The reports mentioned that juvenile spine crawlers have a slightly different venom composition than adults. More potent, but affects different neural pathways. Dr. Zieler looked up sharply. "Are you suggesting, check if it was a juvenile that stung him? My antibodies might not be as effective against their venom." The doctor immediately scanned the residual venom in Neryl's system more carefully. "You're right. This has a higher concentration of neurotoxin B, typical of juvenile specimens." He turned to his assistant. "Modify the antibody synthesis parameters. Increase binding affinity for neurotoxin B." Within minutes, they had formulated a modified treatment and administered it to Neryl. Gradually, his vital signs began to stabilize once more.
Dr.
Zieler returned to Scott's side, an unreadable expression on his alien features. "That observation may have saved his life. How did you know to check for juvenile venom composition?" "Like I said, I read all the reports. The biological survey team from last year lost someone to a juvenile crawler. They included detailed toxicology data in their report. Most expedition specialists focus on geographical and geological data, not biological minutiae." Scott shrugged. "I figure the more I know about what's trying to kill me, the better my chances of avoiding it. Or surviving it." "A wise approach," Dr. Zieler conceded. "Though perhaps better applied before getting stung repeatedly." "Fair point." The next morning, Scott awoke in his own recovery bed, having finally been convinced to rest properly. Dr. Zieler entered the room carrying a data pad and what appeared to be a small medical device. "Good news," the doctor announced without preamble. All 3 victims are stable and recovering. Nero regained consciousness an hour ago. That's great. Scott sat up, noting with satisfaction that his leg pain had diminished considerably. Your medical team does amazing work. As do you, it seems. Dr. Zieler set down the data pad. Your knowledge of the spine crawler venom variants proved crucial, and your antibodies provided the foundation for an effective treatment. Just doing what anyone would do. I doubt that. Dr. Zieler's 4 eyes studied Scott intently. Most species would avoid further contact with creatures that nearly killed them. Yet humans like you deliberately return to dangerous environments, repeatedly exposing yourselves to the same threats. Scott considered this. I suppose it might seem strange. But exploration means accepting certain risks. And sometimes, like yesterday, those risks lead to unexpected benefits. Indeed. Dr. Zieler picked up the small device he had brought. Which brings me to my request. With your permission, I would like to implant this beneath your skin. Scott eyed the device suspiciously. What is it? A biomonitor with sampling capabilities. It will continuously analyze your blood for changes in antibody production and provide real-time data on your physiological responses to any new toxins you encounter. You want to use me as a walking toxicology experiment? I prefer to think of it as turning an unfortunate tendency into a scientific advantage, Dr. Zieler replied, his skin taking on that purple hue again. The data could help us develop better treatments not just for spine crawler venom, but potentially for other toxic exposures as well. Scott considered the proposal. Will it hurt? The implantation is minimally invasive. You may experience mild discomfort for approximately 24 hours. And I get access to the data too? Of course. It will sync with your personal device. You can monitor your own physiological responses in real time, which might help me avoid getting killed the next time something tries to poison me. Precisely. Scott held out his arm. Then let's do it. Where does it go? Upper arm is the standard placement. Dr. Zieler prepared the insertion tool. This will sting briefly. After spine crawler venom, I think I can handle it, Scott said with a small smile. The procedure took only minutes. When it was done, a small green light pulsed gently beneath Scott's skin, barely visible. There, Dr. Zieler said, putting away his tools. Now we will receive continuous data on your immune responses. And should you encounter another venomous creature, which seems likely, given my track record, we will be better prepared to treat you. And others. Scott flexed his arm experimentally, feeling only a slight twinge where the device had been implanted. Happy to be your human guinea pig document. Though I'll try to avoid getting poisoned again, if possible. That would be appreciated. My medical bay has other matters to attend to besides your recurring venom exposures. 3 days later, Scott was cleared for light duty. His leg had healed remarkably well, with only a slight stiffness remaining where the spine crawler's stinger had penetrated. The biomonitor in his arm functioned perfectly, sending a steady stream of data to both his personal device and Dr. Zieler's research database. As Scott prepared to join a new survey team, Captain Voss requested his presence in the command center. He found her reviewing holographic maps of Eldoria surface, focusing particularly on the cave systems where both spine crawler incidents had occurred. Specialist Owens, she acknowledged as he entered. I understand, Dr. Zieler has cleared you for duty. Yes, Captain. Ready to get back to work. She gestured to the hovering maps. Before you do, I want your input on these cave systems. Dr. Zieler informs me that your unique experiences have made you something of an expert on spine crawler habitats. Scott studied the maps carefully. They prefer the limestone formations in the western ranges, particularly these chambers here. He pointed to a series of interconnected caverns. That's likely their primary breeding ground. We should avoid those entirely during the season. And yet your next survey assignment would take you directly through this area. She indicated another section of caves not far from the breeding grounds. The mineral deposits in that region are exactly what the science team needs data on, Scott explained. But we can approach from the southern entrance instead. It's a longer route, but should keep us away from the crawler's territory. Captain Voss considered this, her facial tendrils moving in patterns that suggested deep thought.
Very well.
I will approve the alternative route. But I'm assigning additional security personnel to your team. No argument from me there, Captain. She fixed him with an intense gaze. Dr. Zeeler has briefed me on your biomonitor and the potential scientific value of your adaptive responses to Zirilian venom. While I appreciate the medical breakthrough this represents, I want to be very clear. Your primary value to this expedition is as a cartographer, not as a test subject for venomous creatures. Understood, Captain. In plain terms, Specialist Owens, avoid getting stung again. Scott couldn't help but smile. I'll do my best, Captain. The following week passed without incident. Scott's team successfully mapped the mineral-rich cave system using the southern approach route, avoiding any encounters with spine crawlers. The biomonitor continued to provide valuable data on how his body was processing the residual venom and maintaining the antibodies that had saved both his life and those of the other victims. Dr. Zeeler called Scott to the medical bay to discuss his findings. When Scott arrived, he found the doctor engaged in an animated conversation with Neril, the young Thrashin who had nearly died from the juvenile crawler's sting. "Ah, Mr. Owens," Dr. Zeeler greeted him. "Perfect timing. Neril was just expressing his desire to thank you personally." The young scientist turned to Scott, his blue skin now restored to its healthy hue. "Specialist Owens, I owe you my life." Dr. Zeeler explained how your antibodies formed the basis for the treatment that saved me. "No thanks necessary," Scott replied, genuinely uncomfortable with the gratitude. "I'm just glad you're recovering well. Nevertheless, I am in your debt." Neril bowed slightly, a gesture of deep respect in Thrashin culture. "If I can ever repay this favor, you need only ask." After Neril left to continue his recovery exercises, Dr. Zeeler led Scott to his research station. "The young man speaks the truth. Your antibodies were crucial to his survival. Happy to help. Though I'd rather not have gotten stung in the first place."
About that.
Dr. Zeeler pulled up a complex series of molecular diagrams on his screen. "The data from your biomonitor has revealed something fascinating. Your body continues to adapt its immune response, even weeks after exposure." Scott leaned closer to the screen, though the molecular structures meant little to him. "Is that unusual?" "Extremely. Most species show an initial adaptive response that then stabilizes. Your system continues to refine and improve its defense mechanisms over time." Dr. Zeeler highlighted a particular sequence. "This may explain why your tolerance increases with each exposure." "So, if I got stung again, not that I'm planning to, my reaction would be even less severe?" "Theoretically, yes. Though I strongly advise against testing this hypothesis directly." Scott laughed. "Don't worry, document.
4 times is enough for me."
Dr. Zeeler's expression grew more serious. "There is another matter I wish to discuss with you. The research team has synthesized a vaccine based on your antibodies. It could potentially provide other species with a degree of protection against Zirilian venom." "That's great news. However, to properly test it, we need volunteers."
Dr.
Zeeler hesitated. Captain Voss has authorized a trial among crew members who regularly work in environments where spine crawlers might be encountered. Scott immediately understood the implication. "You want to know if I think people will volunteer?" "Your fellow humans, particularly. Your species seems to hold strong opinions about medical trials." "With good reason," Scott acknowledged. "We've had some dark chapters in our medical history. But if the vaccine could save lives, and if the trial is conducted ethically with full disclosure of risks." All standard protocols would be followed, of course. Scott considered the proposal. I'll talk to the human contingent, explain what happened with Neril and the others. If they understand the potential benefits, I think many will volunteer. Thank you. Dr. Zeeler seemed relieved. Your endorsement would carry significant weight, given your personal experience. Just promise me one thing, document. What is that? If this works, if we can create protection against spine crawler venom, we share the technology with all species who might benefit. Not just those affiliated with the Galactic Science Consortium. Dr. Zeeler's 4 eyes blinked in surprise. That would be unconventional. The consortium typically maintains exclusive rights to discoveries made during its expeditions. This is different, Scott insisted. This came from my blood, from my suffering, and it saved Neril's life. If it can save others, it shouldn't be restricted by politics or profit. For a long moment, Dr. Zeeler was silent, his skin cycling through several shades as he considered the request. Finally, he nodded. I will advocate for open distribution of the vaccine, should it prove effective. Captain Voss may support this position as well, given the circumstances. Thank you. Scott extended his hand, a human gesture he knew Dr. Zeeler had learned to appreciate. Partners in weird medical discoveries? The Veldorian doctor carefully took Scott's hand in his own 3-fingered grip. Partners. 2 weeks later, the vaccine trials were well underway. 28 crew members, including 15 humans, had volunteered to receive the experimental treatment. So far, the results were promising, with minimal side effects and laboratory tests showing antibody production similar to Scott's own natural response. Scott's leg had fully healed, and he had returned to regular duty mapping Eldoria's complex geography. His biomonitor continued to provide valuable data, and Dr. Zeeler had used this information to refine the vaccine formula twice already. On a particularly clear day, Scott was part of a team surveying a plateau region several kilometers from the western cave systems. As they worked, setting up geological scanning equipment, a distress call came through their communication system. Emergency at Research Outpost 3. Medical assistance required immediately. Spine crawler attack. Scott recognized the voice Neril, who had been assigned to the research outpost after his recovery. Without hesitation, Scott activated his communicator. This is Specialist Owens. What's the situation, Neril? Scott. The young Thrashin sounded panicked. 2 researchers down. Adult crawler emerged from a rock fissure we didn't detect. The security officer managed to kill it, but not before it stung them. Is medical help on the way? Yes, but they're 20 minutes out. One victim is already showing severe symptoms. Scott looked to his team leader, a Serovian named Drex. Sir, I need to get to that outpost. My blood, I know your situation, Owens. Drex cut him off. Take the hover transport. Kiv will go with you. Minutes later, Scott and Kiv, a burly security officer, were racing toward Outpost 3 in the small hover transport. As they approached, Scott mentally reviewed everything he knew about spine crawler venom and the emergency protocols Dr. Zeeler had established. The outpost came into view, a small, dome-shaped structure nestled against a cliff face. Scott could see several figures moving urgently around the entrance. As soon as they landed, Neril rushed to meet them. They're inside. Tekla is conscious, but in pain. Varen is unresponsive. Scott hurried into the outpost, finding 2 researchers laid out on examination tables in the small medical alcove. A security officer was administering emergency first aid, but it was clear from his expression that he was out of his depth. I've given them the emergency anti-venom kits, the officer explained, but Varen isn't responding. Scott moved to the Zirilian researcher's side. Varen's normally iridescent skin had dulled to a sickly gray, and his breathing was shallow and irregular. How long ago was he stung? Scott asked, already rolling up his sleeve to expose the biomonitor. 15 minutes, Neril replied. The crawler got him in the chest, near his primary breathing apparatus. Scott quickly activated the emergency blood sampling function on his biomonitor, a feature Dr. Zieler had added specifically for situations like this. A small vial of his blood was automatically extracted and prepared. "Do you have a centrifuge?" he asked, looking around the limited medical facilities. "Basic model, yes." Neril pointed to a small device in the corner. "That'll work." "And synthetic antibody fabrication?" "No, nothing that advanced." Scott thought quickly. "Okay, we'll have to do this the old-fashioned way. My antibodies won't be a perfect match for his system, but they should buy him time until the medical team arrives." Working rapidly, Scott processed his blood sample, separating the plasma containing the crucial antibodies. It wasn't the sophisticated treatment Dr. Zieler would have prepared, but it was better than nothing. "This needs to go directly into his circulatory system," Scott explained to the security officer. "Do you have medical training?" "Basic field medicine only." "That'll have to do. Here's what we need to do." For the next 10 minutes, they worked together to administer the makeshift treatment. Gradually, Veron's condition stabilized, not improving dramatically, but no longer deteriorating. When the medical shuttle finally arrived, Dr. Zieler was the first through the door, medical kit in hand. "Status report," he demanded, moving immediately to Veron's side. Scott quickly explained what they had done. Dr. Zieler nodded approvingly as he examined the Zirilian researcher. "Crude but effective. You've stabilized him enough for transport." The doctor turned to his medical team. "Prepare both patients for immediate evacuation to the ship." As the victims were being transferred to stretchers, Dr. Zieler took Scott aside. "Your quick thinking likely saved Veron's life. The biomonitor performed exactly as designed." "Glad I could help," Scott replied, suddenly feeling the adrenaline crash. "Though I'm getting really tired of these spine crawlers." "As are we all." Dr. Zieler glanced at the biomonitor still visible beneath Scott's skin. "The data we've collected today will be invaluable for refining the vaccine." "Any progress on the trials?" "Extremely promising. Preliminary results show antibody production in 93% of test subjects. If these results hold, we could begin widespread vaccination within weeks." Scott smiled wearily. Then some good came from all this after all. 1 month later, Scott stood in the ship's main gathering hall alongside Dr. Zieler, Captain Voss, and representatives from the Galactic Science Consortium. Before them were assembled the entire expedition crew and holographic observers from a dozen worlds. Captain Voss stepped forward to address the gathering. "Today marks a significant milestone for our expedition and for interspecies cooperation. Thanks to the unique circumstances of one crew member's misfortune, combined with the brilliant work of our medical team, we have developed a vaccine effective against one of the most deadly toxins known to galactic science." She gestured to Scott and Dr. Zieler. Specialist Scott Owens and Dr. Zieler have demonstrated what can be achieved when different species work together, sharing their unique biological traits and scientific expertise. The representative from the consortium, a stern-looking Andorian, spoke next. "The consortium has unanimously voted to make this vaccine technology freely available to all spacefaring species. Distribution will begin immediately to worlds where Zirilian spine crawlers or related venomous species pose a threat." Scott caught Dr. Zieler's eye, the Veldorian's skin showing a pleased purple hue. They had won that battle. The vaccine would be shared, not restricted. After the ceremony, as the crew celebrated, Scott found himself standing beside Neril, who had made a full recovery and had become something of a friend over the past weeks. "I still find it remarkable," Neril said, watching the diverse species mingling around them, "that your unfortunate encounters with those creatures led to such a breakthrough." "Sometimes the worst experiences lead to unexpected benefits," Scott replied, "though I still plan to stay far away from any more spine crawlers." "A wise decision." Neril gestured to the small visible light of the biomonitor in Scott's arm. Will you keep that now that the vaccine has been developed? Scott touched the device thoughtfully. Dr. Zieler wants me to. Says there are thousands of other venomous species out there, and my body's adaptive response might be useful again someday. And will you? I think so. Not because I'm eager to get poisoned again, but because... Scott paused, considering his words carefully. Because if my weird human biology can help others, it seems worth the risk. Nerl nodded in understanding. Your species continues to surprise us. Most beings avoid pain at all costs, yet humans sometimes seem to lean into it.
Not exactly, Scott laughed.
We don't enjoy suffering. We're just stubborn about not letting it stop us from doing what matters. Dr. Zieler joined them, data pad in hand as always. I couldn't help overhearing. Discussing philosophy of pain. Are we? Something like that, Scott replied. Nerl was just questioning my sanity for keeping your little monitoring device. A valid concern, Dr. Zieler said dryly. Though I should inform you both that the latest data shows something unexpected. Scott's antibody production has begun to decline. Is that bad? Scott asked, concerned. Not at all. It's perfectly natural. Without continued exposure to the toxin, your body is redirecting resources elsewhere. The tolerance you built up will gradually diminish. So, if I got stung again in a year, you would likely have a more severe reaction than your most recent exposure, though still less than your first encounter. Dr. Zieler's 4 eyes studied Scott carefully. This is not, I should emphasize, a suggestion to maintain your tolerance through deliberate exposure. Scott held up his hands in surrender. No argument here, document. I'm happy to let that tolerance fade away. The vaccine can protect me now, just like everyone else. A sensible attitude, Dr. Zieler approved. Perhaps you are learning caution at last. Don't count on it, Scott grinned. There are still plenty of unexplored caves on this planet. As the celebration continued around them, Scott reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here, from nearly dying from a spine crawler's venom to helping create a vaccine that would save countless lives across the galaxy. His tolerance to the venom might fade with time, but the impact of what they had accomplished together would endure. And if someday he encountered another deadly creature whose venom might yield similar secrets, well, his biomonitor would be ready, and so would he, though preferably from a safer distance this time.